tippylovesyou.com.
It's time to relax. It's time to find a quiet place. Close your eyes and drift away. It's time to exit the ego taxi without paying and throw coins into the empty fountain of eternity. It's time to unravel. It's time for Tippy. Exercise 8. You find yourself slowly wandering through the woods at sunset. The sky is a watercolor wash of terracottas, vermilions, and candy floss pinks. See how the last of the long day's sunlight dances through the tangled shadows of trees, tinting the forest floor in sumptuous smudges of dusky, somnambulant bliss. This is a special place where the sound of birdsong, the burbling of a distant stream, and the gentlest of breezes through the utmost reaches of ancient trees sing in majestic sleepy time harmony. Hear now that whispering song washing away the world outside, washing away all of your troubles. Washing away all of your petty everyday concerns, so distant and trivial now. It's just you and the mighty forest under a perfect damson sky. You pause a moment to breathe in that rich, fragrant air, the co-mingling aromas of a living forest, lightly kissed by yesterday's rain. Breathe deep and drift away. darker now. Perhaps you've lingered a little longer than intended. The sky is pinpricked with stars, and only the bright white moon lights the view of lichen, moss, and decomposing leaves under your feet. By that silvery glow, you see the gnarled and twisted silhouettes of trees, branches, and foliage. A coldness creeps over you. How long have you been standing here? How long has it been so silent? Time to make tracks down and along the winding trails between the pines, and then across through undulating peaks and troughs between the birch and maple, thick hedgerows of fern and bramble, guided only by the moonbeams that slip through the tangled canopy of trees cast in silhouette above. But wait, this is not the way you came. You acknowledge now the unmistakable familiar feeling that squirms deep in your belly. You are lost. The path has petered out, overrun with forest vegetation. The undergrowth becomes more dense as you trek onward, until you feel like you are wading through it, like these plants are trying to hold you back. They snag on your clothes, scratching at your hands and face. Then suddenly you are through the thicket and out into a clearing. A distinct perimeter where nothing is growing. The floor is dry dust and pine needles, and here before you a curious, dilapidated house. Tall, perhaps 3 or 4 stories, but ramshackle, as if each floor is balanced precariously over the previous one, and all might fall to ruins at any moment. Something like an old cabin, a tiny wooden church, and a schoolhouse from a different time. High above you, one of the many windows set in the panelled wood walls is aglow with the gentle flicker of firelight. Someone is home. There is a bad smell, soft and sweet, and you see to your side there is a long dead fox hanging by its neck from a tree. Next to the fox there is a sort of crude talisman, a little bundle of herbs and sticks, and as you peer through the gloaming you see more of these, marking the outer edge of the circular clearing. A set of steps leads up to the door of the house, where a lantern glows amber and large moths swoop and flutter all around it. You knock tentatively on the old wooden door and listen for a response. There is no reply. Only the creaking of the old house, the wind in the trees, and what sounds like some empty tin cans on a string chiming together on the other side of the clearing. You knock again, louder. And wait. And still nothing. The door handle is very cold to your touch, and the mechanism feels dry and rusted. The handle turns stiffly, but the door doesn't budge. Where else is there to go? You try the handle again, pushing your weight against the door now, and it judders open loudly, making you wince as you stand frozen on the doorstep. The room is dark, the house is silent. You step inside. There is a strong smell, like the smell of the fox, but with something else now. Sulfur and dried herbs. Lavender, sage. The room appears to have no windows. The only light that betrays the pitch black is a thin band that seems to come from under a door at the far end of the room. You call out, "Hello?" But somehow you know you won't get a reply here. You wait. You hear something dripping, thick and oily in the corner. With your hands on the wall to guide you, you shuffle your way across the sightless dark toward the band of light. Your fingers run across something furry, something sticky. You kick a metallic can or bucket, and it gloops with a sound like an upset stomach. And there's a new smell now, sour and milky. With some relief, you push open the door into the light. This new room seems bright by comparison, but it is lit only by a single lantern hanging by the far wall. By that light you see a claustrophobic array of items piled high along the wall to your left. Towers of small wooden boxes, bundles of animal skins, and dried plants hanging from hooks. On the other side of the room, shallow shelves run from the floor to the high ceiling, cluttered with curious bottles and jars, smoky vials full of strangely coloured fluids. A jar of bees which, on inspection, seem to be attached to tiny wooden crosses. A mason jar containing a single small red bird. Did the bird just move? Surely not. Several long strings threaded with moths and locusts hang by the doors on the far side, where a row of large stone pots look like they contain some sort of fat or wax. Next to that, a basket with jawbones of various sizes. Perhaps a trapper or huntsman owns this place. Perhaps it would be best to leave now. But wait. Beyond one of the doors at the end of this room now, a sound. Sweet and lilting. A little girl is singing. It sounds like she's singing to herself while she plays. Perhaps her parents have left her here while they go hunting in the woods. Perhaps she is here against her will. You approach the door and call out softly, "Hello?" The singing stops. You open the door. This room is much brighter than the hallway and considerably less cluttered. The bare floorboards are lit by several flickering lamps. And next to you here is a large black cabinet containing more esoteric vials. And then, with a start, your eyes fall on a bone-thin, ancient woman in the corner of the room with her back turned to you. There is no child here. The woman is barely covered by a torn and tattered once white shift. Her long, ragged hair, which appears to be flecked with old food or vomit, running down past her narrow waist. For a moment she doesn't move, and you silently take in the scene. Could that have been her singing so sweetly? As your eyes trace around her sunken contours, you see that her feet are some 2 or 3 inches above the floorboards, and that she floats there as if on an unseen string. You are standing very still, wondering if there is time to back slowly away, hoping she hasn't noticed you. But she has, and you stand transfixed on the threshold. Her head begins to tilt, and with one wiry porcelain arm draped in thinly sagging skin, you see her slowly lift a dark pewter hand mirror to her face. From where you stand, her thin, cracked lips are perfectly framed in it. She is still for a moment, and then you watch in that little mirror and see those cracked lips part to reveal black gums and stumpy yellow-brown teeth, as she enunciates in not one voice, but three.
The bird is clipped. The trap is set. The meat is hollow within the net.
For a second, you feel as though you might be entirely paralyzed, unable to move a muscle. And then you are overwhelmed by the instinctual urge to flee, and you race down the cluttered hallway, then through the pitch-black room towards the door you came in from. Stumbling and sprawling, you plunge through the door to make a run back to the freedom of the deep, dark forest. The door of the old house slamming shut behind you. But wait. This isn't the forest. You left through the front door of the house, the same door you came in through. But this is not the clearing. No pine trees. No dead fox. You are on the edge of a towering cliff inside a vast, rocky cavern. You catch your breath, your heart pounding and senses quavering. What is this place? The ground is red dust. The russet and grey wall in front of you is a sheer, colossal rock face. At the edge of the plateau, you look down into what appears to be an infinite, abyssal drop. Behind you, there is a rusted iron door in the edifice of the monolithic rock face. This must be the door you came through. Next to it, there are steep, narrow steps carved into the rock, which ascend into the shadows. Beyond that, you see far, far above you what seems to be a tiny pinprick of daylight, perhaps miles away. It is so very quiet here. You begin to climb the narrow steps. Before long, the plateau is a dim speck beneath you, barely discernible from the great void of darkness. The steps are becoming increasingly shallow the higher you go. Just vague indentations in the rock face until you feel like you are climbing the shadow of a ladder. You're using your hands more than your feet now, trying to grip the dusty wall and pull yourself up. Will it ever end? It is very high, and yet that spot of daylight so far above you seems no closer. Perhaps you should have tried to go back through that door. Best not to think about it now. Best to keep going. Best not to look down and see your precarious position and the yawning chasm beneath. And now, finally, your hand reaches out and finds an edge. Through a series of ungainly wiggles, you pull yourself up onto the ledge and find you are in a low, dark tunnel. Too low to stand in. The ceiling is wet and drippy. You crawl along on hands and knees. The tunnel turns corners and you follow it deeper and deeper into the damp and musty blackness. Nothing is visible. A new kind of blackness. The path twists and rises, levels out, then finally it opens into a giant set of steps. Down and down and down the steps, on and on into dank nothingness. Down and down and down. With huge relief, something is now mercifully visible through the dark. A tiny flickering glimmer far beneath you. Onward, buoyed by the approach to light, until at last you stand at the bottom of the steps, where there is a single candle in a brass sconce and a heavily worn wooden door. You fear you have no choice. You open the door. The light is dazzling. Daylight. The smell is familiar, but more than that, there is an intangible but distinct feeling to this place. Something wrong and rotten, and you know you are back again. In that house, with that woman. A different room now, somewhere else in the house. Weird talismans cover the walls. Piles of dusty, leather-bound books. In the corner, a taxidermied bird of prey with a human skull in place of the bird's head. Snow gathers in a small window frame. How long were you away? There is a staircase and a hallway from which you hear the distinct sound of soaring. You tiptoe across the room. The exit must be down this corridor. Bad smell here, sour. In a room with wood-panelled walls lined with more endless jars, you see her standing at a counter, soaring at the lifeless body of some sorry creature. The floor around her is thick with gore. She floats higher than last time, a foot or more above the guts and blood that stain black the floorboards. You hear now that she is chanting as she soars, and something about that sound chills your soul. You are, for a second, paralyzed, knowing that if she spies you here, if you are caught here, it will be the end of you. Knowing this as you know in dreams. You gather your nerves and slowly continue down the corridor as quiet as a mouse. And here is the door. You are turning the handle, ever so lightly, a little more, and it gives. The door eases open with a minuscule squeak. The soaring behind you has stopped, and as you plunge through the doorway, you see her now, blade in hand, flying down the hallway, and you slam the door closed tight behind you with heart in mouth. You turn to face, of course, not the forest you came in through, but some strange new place. A desolate landscape of dust and ruins. Behind you, the door you just burst through is framed in broken bricks. The building it belonged to no longer standing. blotted out by an infinite panorama of nothingness and desolation. You are suddenly very thirsty, your lips and throat parched. And before you there is only dust, dryness, and the burned-out remnants of a city reclaimed by time or disaster. Somewhere on the horizon, in a blur of dancing dirt and acrid chemical smog, a single quivering mirage of a building stands alone. The sole sentinel of this hollowed-out plain of void. Your skin feels tight and weather-beaten. The building is a long way away. You trudge through the whipping winds of grey and rusted dust, the taste of spent batteries burning in your nose and mouth. There's a half-burned dress spread across this mass of bone-dry bramble. Bits of useless junk litter the roadway. A suitcase spilling its guts into the wind. An old clown mask, tattered and smeared. What is the purpose of ownership? In the distance, you hear the sound of a baby crying. In this strange, deserted desert place, it is not a nice sound to hear. You keep walking, lumbering towards that solitary building. As it gets closer, you see that it is vast, gargantuan. A great monolithic stone block with brutal flat square edges. A concrete box the size of a city. The sound of the baby is nearer now, and you see something on the cracked and crumbling roadside up ahead. It's a man. Is it a man? It looks a bit like a man. A very large man, naked and pink, with a head like a pig, with a short, stumpy snout. He has little flappy ears. He's crying. Around his neck, there's a sign that says, Angel of Denial. He doesn't seem to notice you as you approach. It's best not to speak to him. You carry on along the road. You pass an upturned car, paint flaked away, no glass in the windows. A large souvenir in the shape of a country you don't recognize hangs from the rear bumper and swings in the breeze. Some sort of vine has grown over and through the vehicle, but even that seems long dead. Skeletal branches left clinging to the floor pan. And then finally, you're in the shadow of that great grey edifice. Its monumental stone mass reaches perhaps half a mile above you, and maybe twice that off into the distance towards the horizon. It looks like there are windows up there, but at this level there is just this one door. A seemingly normal, standard-sized, regular wooden door. You steel yourself, preparing for what might be on the other side, fearing a return to what now seems inescapable. The handle turns. The door opens, and inside, there is nothing. Just a massive, empty space. Grey stone walls. Dead leaves scattered across the grey stone floor. The ceiling is high above you, but not as high as the building. This must be just the first floor. Perhaps there is a staircase or ladder somewhere off in the distance. It is very still here. You have a sense that if loneliness had a home, this would be the place. What does loneliness taste like? You walk the great cavernous hall, keeping close to the wall. You are so small in this place. Tiny, like an ant in a cathedral. Sunlight beams down in giant fingers through the windows high above. Light plays strangely in here. Shadows flow and turn as if outside the sun were moving gently, unnoticeably up and down, to and fro. You are so very thirsty. The gargantuan room seems to go on forever. There's a pile of old sallow bedclothes and a broken shopping cart. Nothing else but dead leaves from dead trees. It's cold and your legs feel weak, but still you stumble onward. Somewhere is the end of this. It's no darker now after all this time, but something in the colour of the light has changed, and there is an uneasiness to the preternatural stillness of the vast room. From time to time, the silence is broken by a distant sound, low and rumbling. Could that be thunder? Could it be getting closer? Who is that pig man crying in the road? You see the wall at the end of the enormous room now. A great grey mural of nothingness with a set of stone stairs in the corner. Stop here at the bottom for a moment. It's a long way up. As you begin to climb, the steps are deep and wide, and there's no railing or banister. On and on they go. Keep away from the edge. You see the top, and there is no doorway, only a hatch in the ceiling. Wooden trapdoor, well within reach, leading up to the next level. You try to push the wooden hatch up, but it's very heavy and doesn't move easily. Instead, you wedge your hands under the weight of it, then wriggle your arms in, then your head, struggling up into that darkness. Wriggle, wriggle, little worm, until your head, your chest, your torso are through the gap. You pull your legs in, and the trapdoor slams shut behind you. By the dim light of the room, you see in front of you a metal dog bowl full of water. It doesn't look very clean, but you can't stop yourself. It tastes like copper and earth, but it is cold, and you guzzle it down in great greedy gulps. Ah, better now. Your eyes adjust to the dingy darkness. You're inside a sort of wooden pyramid, dark blackened wooden panels reaching up above you to a point. It feels like an attic, muggy and musty and cramped. There's a small window set near the top of the ceiling, and as the clouds clear in front of a bright gibbous moon, the room is lit at once in a thin, silvery glow. There is a cage around you. The bars are slender and close together, more like a bird cage than any human prison. The corners of the cage meet with the slanted walls of the room, making enough space to stand and walk around. But there is nowhere to go. No door to the cage. There is a circle of animal teeth and dried flowers around the outside, and some strange writing on the walls. In the corner, a bundle of fabrics and sticks, bits of esoteric junk. In the opposite corner, by the door, a white sheet hangs on the wall, dirty and tattered. Look closer now. Does it move? Just a little bit. It is her. Her back is to you again, and again she watches you through the little dark mirror. Her eyes are on you, yellow and red, wide and angry. 3 voices in one. Hag, mother, maiden.
The bird is clipped. The trap is set. The meat is hollow. Within the net.
She is walking backwards towards you from the shadows. Not walking, hovering, drifting. Those fierce eyes still on you. Perhaps she will pass through these thin bars. You heave up the weighty trapdoor and peer down. Where before there was the ground floor of an immense stone building, now there is a shallow sea and dusky yellow skies. The doorway is suspended in an overhanging rock. The drop to the water is perhaps twice your height. You hear the woman almost upon you now. You tumble through, splashing down into the salty water. The heavy hatch slamming shut behind you. The sea is not deep, only reaching halfway up your shins. It extends off to the horizon in every direction. A vast, shimmering expanse broken only by the sight of 2 huge black monoliths reaching out of the shallows many miles ahead. They are colossal, stretching miles into the clouded golden skies. The smaller of them is a gigantic pyramid, brutal and severe in its foreboding geometry. The other is shaped like a gargantuan human baby, the torso rooted in the depths, the arms aloft as if reaching for an eternally absent parent. Perhaps somewhere among those strange edifices there are more doors to try.